Hello and welcome everyone to the Paul Foot Awards. Now this year we decided to do something a little bit different because we had no choice. Or rather we did have a choice and we could have followed our instincts and our judgment and had a huge piss up in Barnard Castle. But instead we decided to follow the regulations and to have a virtual award ceremony right here on your own phone or laptop. So no glitzy-do at BAFTA, more big event in your front room. So cheers. I will be announcing the winner later and going through the shortlist. But first, I'd like to hand you over to the man who's done all the work, the man who compiles the long list and reads everything. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Padraig Reedy.
Good evening. It's always a real pleasure and a privilege to take part in the judging of the Paul Foot Award. This year has been no exception. Of course, what has been exceptional this year is the circumstances in which that judging took place. Just as we opened submissions for the award, the biggest story in generations blew up, meaning that many reporters found themselves suddenly covering a 24-hour global news cycle. Thankfully, this has not led to any let-up in the quality or quantity of the submissions that we have seen this year. The judges were particularly impressed by the sheer range of stories that we saw this year, and the shortlist reflects that, with everything from global corruption stories to hyperlocal policing issues. There has also been a really noticeable shift in the range of the type of outlets. We see freelancers, we see local stories, we see reporting conglomerates, and it's no longer really the reserve of the so-called Fleet Street big beast to take part in these investigations. I think that's really encouraging for the future. We see that it's not just big budgets that determine these things. It's about reporters with real passion for the news and real passion for their subjects that will mean that stories will still get told. I'd like to thank the judges who were brilliant in their deliberations this year, particularly Matt Foote, Julia Langdon, Francis Ween, Helen Lewis, Simon Jenkins, Janine Gibson, and Emily Dugan, last year's winner. At Private Eye, we would particularly like to thank Maisie Glazebrook, who has kept the ship running in very difficult circumstances, and also Sheila Molnar and Jeff Elwell, and Amelia Knight at Midas PR, who has been such a brilliant guide through all this. I'll hand back to Ian now, who will tell you more about the awards shortlist.
Thank you, Padraig, and all the judges for all your hard work. This is an occasion celebrating journalism, and I could have no other theme for such an occasion than the words of Dominic Cummings. Not only did he give Private Eye enough material for an entire issue and a chance to make endless cheap jokes about eye tests, but he also said two things which I think are very important. Sadly, neither of them was I resign, but they do give us something to celebrate. The first was, I blame the media, and it's still immensely comforting to find that it's all our fault. It's great, otherwise we really are wasting our time. The fact that Mr. Cummings' breaches of the lockdown came out into the open was indeed the fault of the media. So well done to The Guardian and The Mirror. But we have to admit that these organisations were aided and abetted by people that Cummings hates even more than the press. Yes, it's the general public. How incredibly annoying the public are. You tell them to stay alert, and then one of them spots that the Prime Minister's chief advisor is breaking his own rules. And he tells the papers. As Paul Foot always used to say, and I never tire of repeating, Paul said, I'm often asked, what's the secret of great journalism? And he always replied, people ring me up and tell me things, and then I write them down. You see, and that's the public, and it's still true. And then when someone like Cummings gets cross with the journalists and says they're spreading misinformation, he comes on, makes a statement in his own words that makes him look much, much worse than we could ever do. And it's that same irritating public who do tend to obey the rules and do find it rather irritating when someone else doesn't. Hence the Daily Telegraph's big scoop about the expert whose married lover broke the rules to visit him, Professor Lockdown, or Professor Trousers Down, as one publication rather pathetically described him. Oh yes, that was Private Eye. Anyway, that was a piece in the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Boris graph, the great cheerleader, which just goes to show that at their best, or worst, if that's how you see it, it's all the media who are to blame. left, right and middle, for continuing to question what's happening in this country and for continuing to try and hold those in power to account. The second memorable theme of the Cummings affair was the phrase immediately used by all defenders of Cummings, which was "move on." The phrase was repeated by so many cabinet ministers that it must have been given to them by the Prime Minister, or even someone more important than that, his political advisor. And if there's one thing that Paul Foot taught us all, is that actually a good reporter doesn't move on. Not at once, not after a suitable interval, and sometimes not at all, ever. It is the dogged refusal to move on that defines investigative and campaigning journalism. And this is certainly the case for this year's brilliant entries, shortlist and winner. And it's across the board. There were great entries from the mainstream media, The Times, the Daily Express, The Guardian, the Sunday Post in Scotland, and also from digital platforms and local papers, as you will see. And the stories were international, national, regional, institutional, you name it. And the great thing about these awards is they do remind us of life before there was only one story, and remind us that these other things all still matter and will do so even more as we emerge from the crisis. And why not address these issues? No one can say anymore to a journalist, well, we can't do that. It would be too difficult to do that. We don't have the money to do that because we've done everything already for this. So perhaps there is no new normal. Anyway, that's just my opinion, and I'm sure the entire country shares it. And before I turn into Emily Maitlis, I think I'd better announce the actual Foot Awards. So the shortlist is Katie J.M. Baker and Tom Warren from BuzzFeed News, The World Wildlife Fund's Secret War. Over the course of a year, the BuzzFeed investigations team revealed how one of the biggest and wealthiest wildlife charities was complicit in torture and killing by rangers and guards at wildlife reserves, and how the organisations continually attempted to ignore or deflect criticism, including internally commissioned reports. The WWF's allocation of funds to individuals and organisations suspected of abuses is now being investigated by authorities in the UK and the US. Kit Chellel, Joe Light and Ruth Olarunbi for Bloomberg Business Week. Is one of the world's biggest lawsuits built on a sham? Bloomberg Business Week's investigation of a case that went from the dance halls of Ireland to the High Court in London via the oil fields of Nigeria was an intriguing account that spanned decades and continents, with fascinating protagonists, clear explanation of complex scams, and an important tale of how London's status as a hub of global corporate law can lead to UK politicians lobbying on behalf of the shadier end of international business. Priti Patel. Spoiler alert. Alexandra Heal, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and various outlets. Nowhere to turn. Alexandra Heal's shocking investigation revealed how police forces close ranks when a domestic abuse complaint is made against one of their officers, leaving vulnerable women with no recourse to justice and even more fearful than before. Heal's reporting has led to a super complaint being lodged with the police inspectorate, detailing alleged sexist mishandling of domestic abuse cases perpetrated by officers at 30 out of 43 forces in England and Wales. Charles Thompson, the Yellow Advertiser. Paedophile police informant investigation. Essex local newspaper The Yellow Advertiser's tenacity yielded some astonishing results in exposing how Essex police protected a known predatory paedophile and police informant, and then attempted to stifle the results of an inquiry into the force's behaviour. The fact this investigation took place even as the paper faced closure, the paper has since relaunched, underlines the dedication of the reporter and editor in pursuing this story. Francis Ryan from The Guardian, Britain's disability scandal. Francis Ryan's reporting has revealed how thousands of people with disabilities have been affected by years of cuts to welfare. Ryan spoke to women in a range of extreme circumstances, from mentally ill women forced into sex work to vulnerable people pressured into haggling with social services for legitimately claimed benefits. Nadine White and Emma Yule for HuffPost UK for SPAC Nation investigation. This is the religious movement SPAC Nation, the Salvation Proclaimers Anointed Church Nation, which was endorsed by politicians and local authorities for its apparently innovative approach to leading young people away from crime. But an in-depth investigation by HuffPost UK found many people who said the church's charismatic leaders were living the high life while junior church members were forced to take out loans they could not afford and even give blood to help the church's finances. So that's the 2020 shortlist, full of amazing journalists, many of whom are very young, which is both very cheering and obviously very annoying. And that's just to reassure everyone that this year the money is real. We're doing this remotely, obviously, but it's not virtual money. Everybody will get a check and the winner will get a larger one. So it's now time to announce who the winner is. And the winner of the Paul Foot 2020 Awards is... You thought I'd frozen there on Zoom, didn't you? But I hadn't. It was for dramatic effect. The winner is Alexandra Heal. So congratulations to Alexandra. And when I told her she'd won, this is what she had to say. Okay, congratulations, Alexandra. That's a terrific win against a really classy field. So you did extremely well. Tell us about how you got the story.
Yeah, so I got the story. I was doing my journalism training. It was April 2018, and a friend told me that she knew of a woman who had been abused by a police officer, and she'd reported it to the police, and apparently nothing had been done about it. So it just got me wondering if this was a kind of wider spread issue. And so I kind of set about finding data. I submitted freedom of information requests to every force in the UK, which is 48 forces, including specialist ones. And I found quite a lot of interesting stuff. I found that police officers...
43, is that right?
43 in England and Wales, and then if you add the specialist ones, and then Scotland and Ireland, it was 48.
Yeah, couldn't believe that figure.
Yeah, it's mental, and there's 4 reports a week, and that must be an understatement, because so many victims of domestic abuse don't report it, let alone if your abuser works for the very organisation that is supposed to protect you. And in so many cases I found that the perpetrators would abuse their position to intimidate their wives and partners into silence, saying, oh, the police are a family, they'll protect me.
Yeah.
If you report me, I'll get you thrown in prison, I know the legal system better than you. And in many cases that did actually turn out to be true. We had a woman who was arrested multiple times on her ex-husband's word, a woman who reported it and later found out the investigating officer was on the same football team as her abusive partner. So it was so many examples.
The judging lunch, I think, was literally on the day when that policeman had been caught on video saying to one of the people who he thought was breaking the virus regulations, he said, who are they going to believe, you or me? It was extraordinary timing. We thought, well, if that's what you get if you're sunbathing, can you imagine what you get if you've reported a policeman for abuse?
Yeah, exactly. And the way that the police officers also just other things they would do, like accessing police records to track their ex-partners. Someone said that their ex-partner had stalked them in a marked police car. And then the examples of police collusion as well. So not only the example of arresting the ex-partner in the middle of the night and all of those times, but there was one woman who told me that she was suicidal as a result of her abuse. She was going to jump off a bridge and she called the police and they came to collect her or whatever. And she told them why she was feeling this way and begged them not to take her back to her partner. But they drove her back to him and handed her over and he said, all right, mates, I'll deal with her now. And yeah, it was just outrageous.
And how did you get it into print?
So as I said, I started this when I was doing my journalism training, and had a lot of help there from my tutor Heather Brooke. And then I went and I started a 2-month contract at the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and I pitched it to my editors Marion Jones and Miriam Wells, and Rachel Oldroyd, and they kind of were really outraged, and they said, yeah, this is a great story. And because I already had all the cases and the data, I thought it would take, about a few weeks to get it ready to be published. And little did any of us know it would take another year to get it published because of so many various hurdles.
And where did it appear in the end?
So it was in the Times. It was the Bureau website, obviously, but the Times, BBC Online. We did stories in the Observer and the Ferret, and another one on BBC Online as well. So, and then it got picked up by broadcasts like the 1 o'clock news, Victoria Derbyshire show. So
pretty good take up then.
Yeah. It was really exciting because it was my first story. So
right. Well, that's ridiculous. I can't believe they've chosen you as the winner. I mean, it's just too annoying. Anyway,
I'm in shock.
This is what you're going to get, obviously, which is, if I can just get a close up of this, this is an enormous check. Well,
wow.
From the Foot Awards for first prize, and you can do obviously whatever you like with it. Entirely up to you.
Well, giving it to the Bureau to carry on this reporting on this topic.
Right. Well, you're incredibly generous, and that's great news. So, if you've got anything to say, sort of formally as a received speech, normally you'd get up on a podium, obviously not at all frightening, in front of all your fellow journalists who didn't win, and expect them to give you a good audience. But
this is a lot easier.
This might be a bit easier. So whatever you want to say, do. And anyway, congrats again. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've prepared a little speech. So yeah, I'm absolutely gobsmacked to have won. I couldn't even believe I was shortlisted for the Paul Foot Award alongside so many brilliant other stories. And so when I got a call to say I'd won, I was absolutely astounded. I was in the middle of cooking an omelette and I cried. And I've been grinning like a Cheshire cat ever since. So thank you so much to the Private Eye. I obviously admire the journalism you do, and you play such an important role in the British media and society. And I also, from what I've read about Paul Foot, he was such a committed and brilliant journalist. So I really hope he would approve. The most important thing to say is this award is for the women who came forward to speak to me for the various stories, and for the super complaint. A lot of them found it so hard to relive their experiences by telling them to me, and they all were doing it because they wanted not another woman to go through the same shocking thing that they had. So I really hope the super complaint does lead to material changes and help end the kind of outrageous boys club culture that we've seen. I absolutely could not have published this story without the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and my editors there, Rachel Oldroyd, Marion Jones and Miriam Wells. I took the story to them when I started on a short contract, and we never thought that it would take another year to get it published, but they were so supportive throughout and taught me so much because they're so experienced. And also I want to say thank you to Andrew Wasley, who's my colleague on my other hat at the Bureau is being on the environment team. That's my other main passion, and he's my colleague on that team, and he was so understanding when I went off to work on this and still do. It was the publishing partners that really amplified the story. Fiona Hamilton and John Simpson at the Times, Anna Adams at the BBC, and Mark Townsend at the Observer. And it goes without saying that so much of the impact of this story is down to the Centre for Women's Justice, in particular Noga Ofer and Harriet Wistrich. Noga worked for months on the super complaint, and it was only submitted in March, and the fact that it already seems to be having some sort of impact is really, really uplifting and promising. I want to thank my journalism tutor, Heather Brooke, who guided me a lot on the initial research. The friend who gave me the tip-off, she knows who she is. I want to thank the Bureau again for developing my journalism skills so much, and also to my boyfriend and my family for supporting me through quite a lot of tears, but being so excited when it was eventually published. And I guess the final thing to say is it is so outrageous that police forces have been allowing their officers to get away with this for so long, and I really hope the Chief Constable's call time on it.
Paul was very, very keen, obviously, on stories about the police, which he did a large number of, and he would have greatly approved of this one. And also your idea that a year was quite a long time to get a story into print. One of the things Paul did was just stick at things for years, I mean decades even, in some of his miscarriages cases, until they eventually came good. So both the subject and the way you handled it would have been absolutely a delight to him.
Oh, I'm so glad. I read that he about everything he did with the Birmingham 6 and the Bridgewater 4 and everything. So I'm glad you think he would approve.
Definitely. So that's it. It just remains for me to thank everyone very much, those who organised the evening and those who joined us for making it still a remarkable event in a year that's quite remarkable in itself. So final thanks to the judges for choosing such a brilliant list and for cheering us up with the standard of journalism still on offer in 2020. Great. Good night.
Right.
A toast, firstly to the spirit of Paul Foote, and then to our brilliant winner, Alexandra Heal. Congratulations.
Hey.
Cheers.
Congratulations.